Jason Stinson. Jason, you want to go ahead and turn on your camera and share your screen? Jason's a co-founder and CTO of Renovo, which is a Silicon Valley automotive software company that focuses on things that merge software, data management, automotive grade safety systems, ADAS, autonomous vehicle fleets, et cetera. It's fascinating. Jason and I could probably just sit here and chat at you without slides and without bio, without anything for the rest of the day. But Jason's got some pretty cool stuff. So welcome, Jason, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Arthur. Yeah, I think we could definitely chat for a long time. I'm not sure anybody else would want to listen to us chat, but we'll certainly go on for a while. All right, let's get, I assume everyone can see the screen. Let me turn off my video real quick so you can focus on that. So yeah, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about, as the title says, balancing speed and agility with safety and security, particularly in the automotive industry. So a lot of this is going to queue up a conversation that I'm hoping to have with Arthur at the end, as well as with the audience. Let's jump into it. So right now, it's a pretty exciting time in the auto industry. We're going through another one of these periods over the 130-year history of the automotive industry of innovation and excitement, and people are focused on it. We're getting a lot of, from the graduating engineers, they're excited to come work in this space. So these are all great signs. And we're seeing great products from the traditional players like you see on the left. One of the most interesting pieces are the new entrants. This is really where a lot of the greatest excitement is coming from, and a lot of where the traditional players are starting to change and be catalyzed for that change. The new players are bringing obviously new ideas, whether that's electrification, to the form factor of the car, to usage models, lots of new ways of interacting with those vehicles. But are they legit? How are these new players really here to stay? I just pulled some headlines from the last few months. Certainly the capital markets believe that these new entrants are going to change the industry or have a big impact on it. We're seeing really big dollar raises at big dollar valuations from all of these new folks. They certainly, at a minimum, these new players have the money to execute on their plans, and their plans are obviously to disrupt the industry. This is somewhat different than the last generation of new players that we saw right around in the noughties with Fisker and Coda and Aptiva. They were funded, but not at this level. So that's exciting. But of course, for anybody following the automotive industry, the big elephant in the room is Tesla. They are not only sitting at the top of the valuation game for the new entrants, they're sitting at the top of the capital markets for the entire industry. They are currently not only bigger than the rest than anybody else, they're actually larger than the next 3 to 4 combined automakers on the list. And a few months ago, they were actually bigger than the top 9 combined. They are clearly doing something that the financial markets are valuing, and incidentally also the consumers are valuing. That's part of the reason the financial markets are excited about Tesla. If you look at the way the industry has reacted to Tesla, it spent the first decade of Tesla's existence mostly downplaying it. The other players in the market mostly downplayed their quality issues and their approach. But when Tesla started to match and then eventually eclipse their valuation within the market, that's when the automakers started to change. And in the last few years, they've been talking about how they're basically adopting and becoming more like Tesla. So let's look at what they focused on. So I think it's important when we look at Tesla or any of these other automakers, new entrants, what is it that they're doing that's different than traditional? What the automakers have focused a lot on is the electrification piece. So again, tons of headlines. Tesla nominally started out as kind of the first I'm going to put in air quotes here, real EV company, or at least they were 100% focused on electrification. And the media continues to attribute their technology leadership in electrification as their big differentiator, that the electrification of the powertrain is what Tesla's all about. Automakers have obviously responded, and if you look at some of these headlines, they've responded basically announcing some level of full or nearly full transition to EV. And we'll expect that to continue for the next few years, that you'll continue to see folks that aren't on this list announcing some measure of electrification. It's an important piece of Tesla's history, but it's not the real story behind the valuation that Tesla has or the excitement that Tesla has with the consumers. We believe it's something different, and actually at least sections of the auto industry also believe that. This is a great quote from the largest automaker, from the CEO of the largest automaker on the planet, Dr. Dietz, where he believes in order to be valued like Tesla, Volkswagen has to become a software company, has to become a tech company, and that they are not that today. He's committed to changing the structure and nature of VW in order to compete. He believes that it's all about software. We 100% agree with Dr. Dietz. It really is all about the software. It's about the features that are enabled by the software. It's about the agility, the ability to adapt that's enabled by the software. And it's also about the operational opportunities, new opportunities that become enabled by the software. So software is, it's where it's at. I mean, I love the middle of his quote here that says that, he believes that 90% of the innovation that's going to be happening will come from software. And not only that, VW is committing or believes that half of their development cost is going to come from software. When you think about, software development in general is a lot less expensive than building factories or things that smash metal or doing that sort of level of development. This is a huge statement to say that they believe that half of that dev cost is going to come from the software side. So that's really exciting. Let's take a look at one particular software feature. So as we dive a little deeper into software, what does this mean? Let's focus on OTA, or over-the-air updates. This is a process of updating software in the vehicle over either a cellular connection or a Wi-Fi connection without having to bring the vehicle into a dealership. It's a similar process, to what happens on your cell phone. So it's pretty straightforward. Tesla's been doing over-the-air updates, OTA, for about a decade to update their vehicles. As you see in the slide, they've used over the last few years well over 3 billion miles of data to help iterate and evolve that process of over-the-air updates. On average, this is a slide from last year. On average, Tesla was pushing a software update directly to their customers every 2 weeks. This is, if you look at the types of things that they've been updating, pretty massive benefits to their customers. One of the first big updates that they did was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, when they had some problems with debris hitting the underside of their vehicles with enough force to puncture the battery systems, and they had a couple high-profile fires that resulted. With most automakers, that would have been a pretty massive recall. Tesla was able to do an over-the-air update to raise the height of their vehicles when they were traveling above a certain speed. And that, reduced the kinetic energy of the debris that could hit their vehicles and ultimately prevented them from having a pretty big recall. In addition, Some of the other big notables on over-the-air updates for them, have been advances in driver assistance and, full self-driving for them. Regardless of how you feel about full self-driving, it's a pretty big feature. It's a pretty big change. That was an over-the-air update. So this has been a huge advantage for Tesla. How does that compare with the rest of the industry? Sorry. There we go. How does that compare to the rest of the industry? So I just looked over the last few months and pulled some of the higher profile software updates that have been announced by traditional players in the industry. These are 3 of them. These are new features like you see in the upper left-hand corner with Dodge, improving the security of the Challenger and the Charger. And the 2 on the one on the right and the one at the bottom were software recalls that are related to actuator malfunctions, or even in one case to the cars burning to the ground. So these are pretty important software updates. In all cases, it's been the same story. There's a new update available, and you need to take your car into the dealership. And I love the Dodge announcement. It's as easy as calling your local dealer and scheduling an appointment. What that means really is schedule an appointment, wait a week for that appointment to arrive, drop the car off, take an Uber back home, wait a day or 2, take an Uber back to the dealer, settle up at the dealer, drive the car home. So from a customer experience standpoint, relative to what they're used to with their phones or what Tesla customers are used to, it's a pretty big burden. There's a big cost in both consumer time as well as just labor costs. The cost for the dealers and for ultimately for the manufacturers across millions of vehicles. OTA isn't a new concept to the car industry. It's been worked on for decades. This isn't something that hasn't been developed, but it's still not widely deployed. In fact, barely deployed. I think later this year was the Mach-E has committed, I think towards the end of this quarter, to do an update for their self-driving for their ADAS features. But it's taken a long time. It really took, if you look at the history of this, it took a software company dressed up like a car company to get it done. This is Tesla. Tesla was really a software company. They were a tech company that just happened to put their software onto something that had 4 wheels. And ultimately, what this means for the rest of the industry, to be a software company, it's not enough to just develop software. It's actually about the process of developing software. How is that software developed? The car industry has been writing software for a very long time, but they're not software companies. What does that mean? The next slide. So on the left, I think the previous speaker talked a little bit about CI/CD pipelines, continuous improvement, continuous development. Hopefully, most of the folks in the audience are pretty familiar with this, but just a quick review. On the left side in blue, we have the traditional plan, develop, test kind of part of the loop. On the right side, we have the deployment and the operation of the software being developed. The magic with CI/CD is when you connect the 2 together. That feedback or the monitor stage comes back into the development cycle. And then after the development cycle is done, you have a way of quickly and easily deploying back to operation. So that's really the magic in a CI/CD pipeline, is this continuous loop. When we talk about CI/CD, there's really kind of 2 ways of talking about it. There's a way that most folks talk about it, which we like to call it, or anyway, we like to call it small loop. We've heard that term as well in other places. This is a CI/CD flow that's internal to the development phase or internal to the company, which looks like daily development, push your code, to the integration stage, test, and then get feedback. And that's all done well before a customer ever sees it. Then there's the big loop, which is really the key differentiator here. This is what I'm focusing on for a lot of the rest of this discussion, is the deploying it to your customers, getting feedback from your customers, making changes, and then redeploying it back out to your customers. It's that big loop that really makes a huge difference. And this is what the automotive industry is largely missing, both from OTA, a simple way of pushing it to their customers, as well as getting that data back from their customers. I love this chart on the right. Consumer Reports at the end of last year released a ranking of all the active driver assistance systems. I'm not going to focus too much on the details here, but the key thing to note is if you look at the two of the top 3 companies listed on this chart, and there's a pretty big discrepancy between them and everybody else on the list. Only 2 of the top 3 of these companies heavily leverage a full loop or big loop CI/CD pipeline. That's Tesla and Comma.ai. Even more remarkable is that Comma.ai is not an automaker. It's a very small aftermarket 6-year-old company with a handful of engineers. And they're able to beat out the world's best automakers on delivering the most innovative software features. And the key here is that they're leveraging a full loop CI/CD pipeline. And the power of that kind of modern software practice is critical. That's how they get ahead. This is maybe a good point just quickly to talk about what we do at Renovo. This is going to be my only slide on Renovo. We've developed a software platform, an award-winning software platform that enables developers at the automakers to build software on par with Tesla. So we enable data orchestration from their real-world fleet, and then we also enable and support the over-the-air update of software in their globally distributed fleets. Our own software is, of course, developed using latest software practices and processes, and our platform is a key part of helping automakers build their own practices around modern processes. It's been developed. We've been around for a little over 11 years, and we've captured lots of awards. So that's the advertisement. So at the end of the day, automakers have to build processes that balance this agility, this ability to quickly develop software, deploy it, get feedback, with safety. And do that all while delivering the features and the environment that customers value. So what does this mean? I can go to the next slide. There we go. This is where the conflict arises, or at least the challenges arise. So on the left side, we've had a lot of discussions today. A great discussion. I really like Bruce's discussion early on about Agile, the Agile process of developing software. This is the Agile Manifesto. You can see that what the 4 key concepts of the Agile Manifesto are. Effectively focus on the end product, focus on customer satisfaction, and focus on fast response. And that's done over. It's more important. It's not like the other things on the right aren't important, but the things on the left are more important than process, planning, and documentation. That it really is about agility, and it's about focusing on the customer. On the right, you have a traditional V model used by the automotive industry, and whether you're talking ISO 26262 or ASPICE, or I also liked Bill's discussion about DL 178. All of these follow kind of a traditional V model. The key here is documentation, planning, and process over fast response, iteration, and honestly, even over customer satisfaction. I also liked when Bruce talked about the difference between building requirements versus actually meeting the customer needs, and there's a big gap between those. The other thing you also note about the V model is it's a linear model. There is no feedback loop here. There's a comparison time, but there's no, when you get to the end of the V model, you're done. And in an agile world, you're never done. You're never done building the software and deploying the software. In the V model, no code is written until a full plan is baked, requirements are detailed, the test plan is complete. It's a very simple and straightforward way of building traceability and accountability, but it's also quite slow and not very adaptable. So this is the challenge that the automotive industry is facing. How do they become more nimble? How do they become more like Tesla? Tesla does not adhere to the same level of rigor and structure as a lot of the rest of the industry. How do we balance those two things? That is the point at which I'm going to open it up for questions, as well as bring Arthur back into the discussion.
All right. It's just fascinating stuff. And if you want, you could turn your camera on and we can chat about these things. One of the questions that came in is, how have OTA capabilities through things like smartphones changed user expectations for new software features over a product's lifespan?
I mean, it's a great question. It's kind of a softball question because it's massively changed the expectations. Obviously, the consumers are used to fast response times. They're, I expect this feature to get fixed. I'm amazed, actually, developers. There's a lot of open source and a lot of products that are used now within, just the development teams. That expectation has changed a lot. Like, we file a bug and a couple weeks later we get a fix for that bug. It's brought developers and their end users much closer together than ever before. It's a nice couple as well with the physical world. It's kind of what Amazon has done with package delivery. I expect that I need to order something and I'll have it within a day or two. It's our expectations in the world now are for much faster response times.
Yeah. And, when I bought a car in the past, I had an expectation that the manufacturer would fix things, but I never bought one with an expectation that they would deliver new features. And now we expect it, right? There was a question about what are some of the challenges in convincing automobile manufacturers to adapt more of an agile thought process over V model? Is there a culture shock in this process?
That's a great question. The automakers have amazing software engineers. They have amazing software, teams and engineering teams. They understand this. They get it. And so and I think when we talk to them about these sorts of concepts or hallway chats at conferences, it's well understood. The challenge that the automakers face is the institutional and organizational structure. It's very difficult. It goes back to Conway's law from the mid '60s of the technology is developed more along the lines of the organization than the technology itself, and that's where the challenge. When people they're sponges, they embrace it. The automakers, like when we talk to them, they totally get it. But then when it comes to actually changing their process and changing how they do it, it's hard because they have their entire structure, their entire flows are built around this very process planning, documentation heavy system. So that's where the challenge lies. I think they all have a desire to do it. It's just we all would like to be a lot more healthy and run more and exercise more, and it's a matter of just making that change.
Yeah, it's a tough change from a world where products had specific lifespans and didn't alter over their lifespan, right, and keeping it up and the complexity. So Fascinating stuff, Jason. I appreciate you coming on today. I think you and I are going to say more stuff like this in the future, and some of the other speakers as well, to do some panels. But really love what you did there.